The desert had a way of swallowing voices. Even when she begged him not to, her words seemed to vanish into the heat between them. "Don't follow me into the desert," she pleaded, eyes hollow, lips cracked as though every syllable cost her blood. The outlaw didn't answer. He only reached down, lifted her frail frame onto his saddle, and turned his horse toward the horizon where the land shimmered like a furnace. Her wrists were raw from rope burns. Her dress, torn by cactus thorns, clung to her skin with the dust of days. Whoever left her bound at the canyon rim hadn't meant for her to see another sunrise. Yet she was alive, staring at him with a warning stronger than her broken voice. "You'll regret this." The outlaw adjusted his hat, his face carved by sun and shadows. Regret was a currency he'd long since spent. The desert met them with silence. No trees, no mercy, only endless ripples of sand and stone. Heat radiated off the ground like fire escaping the earth. His horse labored forward, each step a dull thud in the emptiness. He didn't ask her name. She didn't ask his. Some truths didn't survive in places like this. A buzzard drifted overhead, patient as death itself. She turned her face into his chest, shielding her eyes from the sun, but her words lingered. Why warn the man who saved you, unless saving you was a trap of its own? By nightfall, the desert turned cold enough to cut bone. The outlaw built a small fire, the flame licking low against the wind. She sat wrapped in his saddle blanket, staring into the embers. At last, she whispered, "You should have left me where you found me." He studied her across the firelight. 100 questions clawed his throat, but he swallowed them. Questions in the desert had a way of calling answers no man wanted. Still, something in her tone promised more than despair. It promised danger. The fire cracked, sending sparks into the black sky. Outlaw or not, he had made his choice. And choices, out here, were the only things a man truly owned. The desert wind carried a howl across the stones. Was it just wind? Or something else? Closing. In friend or foe? Salvation or a crueler fate? Dawn painted the desert in pale gold, but it brought no comfort. The outlaw rose before the woman stirred, scanning the horizon with a hunter's caution. The sand bore more than the prints of his horse. Hoof tracks trailed them from the canyon. Someone had followed. He kicked dust over the dying embers of their fire and lifted her gently onto the saddle. She didn't protest this time. Her silence was heavier than words, the kind that carried secrets meant to stay buried. As the horse moved forward, she clutched the blanket around her shoulders, eyes darting to the edges of the salt flats. By mid-morning, heat rolled over them like a hammer. Their water pouch was nearly dry, its leather stiff from the sun. He handed it to her first. She drank in small sips, then pushed it back with trembling fingers. "You'll need it more than me," she murmured. He almost laughed, but the dryness in his throat killed the sound. The land stretched flat and merciless, white with salt crusts that blinded the eye. Vultures circled above, their shadows skating over the ground. The outlaw's instincts clawed at him. This wasn't just the wilderness closing in. Someone was hunting them. At noon, they found a patch of mesquite scrub, thin shade against the blaze. She leaned against the horse's flank, her breathing shallow. He squatted near her, resting one hand on the rifle across his knees. "Who's on our trail?" he asked at last. Her lips twitched, torn between confession and defiance. "Men who don't forgive. Men who will burn the world to find me." That was all. No names, no reasons. Yet it was enough to confirm the outlaw's suspicion. By saving her, he hadn't just taken in a stranger, he had inherited her enemies. They pushed on, sand crunching under hoofbeats like glass. Every gust of wind erased their path, but the tracks behind them kept reappearing, stubborn as fate. As dusk bled across the horizon, the outlaw's eyes caught movement. a distant rider, dark against the fire-stained sky. One rider, then another. Shadows multiplying. The chase had begun. The woman turned, saw them too, and gripped his arm. "I warned you," she whispered, voice breaking. The outlaw narrowed his eyes. The desert had already claimed too much from him. It wouldn't claim her. Not tonight. The horse surged forward into the twilight, hoofbeats pounding against the silence, carrying them deeper into a land where only the ruthless survived. And behind them, the riders quickened. By the time they reached the ruins, the desert had turned black with storm clouds. The outlaw guided his horse into the hollow of a crumbling mission, its adobe walls cracked and leaning, its cross long since broken. Lightning tore across the sky, revealing shattered pews and stone worn smooth by decades of dust. They dismounted quickly. Rain began to fall in hard, stinging drops, soaking the earth and raising the smell of clay. The woman stumbled inside, clutching her side, her breath ragged. The outlaw followed, rifle in hand, eyes scanning every shadow. The storm would mask their trail for now, but storms never lasted long in the west. He set a lantern on a cracked altar and lit it. Warm light pushed back the gloom, catching the scars on her wrists, the hollow hunger in her cheeks. For the first time since he'd found her, she let herself sit without fear of collapsing. He passed her a strip of jerky from his saddlebag. She chewed slowly, each bite deliberate, as if remembering what food felt like. "What do they want? From you?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Her eyes flicked to the shadows above, where rain dripped through the broken roof. Then, at last, she spoke. "Not from me, from what I carry." Her hand pressed gently against her chest, where a small pouch hung from a cord. The outlaw's gaze lingered, questions burning. But before he could ask more, thunder cracked so loud it shook dust from the rafters. For a moment, the storm drowned out everything. The outlaw almost welcomed it. But then, between the thunderclaps, came another sound. Hoofbeats, distant, muffled, but closing. The woman's face tightened. "They've found us!" He blew out the lantern. Darkness reclaimed the mission, save for the flashes of lightning, painting the walls in ghostly silver. They crouched behind the fallen altar, the outlaw's rifle braced and steady. His pulse slowed, not with fear, but with the cold readiness of a man who'd stood in ambush before. The rain thickened, drumming. Like war drums, each heartbeat stretched the silence. The woman leaned close, her whisper trembling. "If you die for me, outlaw, you die for nothing." He didn't answer. His finger tightened on the trigger, a flash of lightning lit the doorway, and with it, the silhouette of a rider dismounting, friend or foe, salvation or another hand of death. The rider's shadow stretched long across the rain-slick floor. Lantern light flickered in his grip, bouncing off the broken walls like a restless spirit. Then another rider appeared behind him, and another. Soon the mission's doorway burned. With dim orange halos, lanterns bobbing, steel gleaming, voices low and rough. The outlaw steadied his rifle, muscles coiled. Beside him, the woman clutched that small pouch at her chest, whispering words he couldn't catch. A prayer or a curse. Outside, thunder rolled. Inside, boots scuffed against stone. "She's here," one man growled, voice deep as gravel. "Ain't no storm gonna hide her now." The outlaw's jaw tightened. He leaned closer to the woman. "Time's up. You'd better tell me what they're after." Her eyes glistened in the dark. "Something men would kill whole towns for. And I'm the only one left who knows where it leads." Before he could press further, gunfire shattered the silence. Bullets sparked off stone, ricocheted through the ruins. He pulled her down behind the altar, returning fire with two sharp cracks of his rifle. One lantern burst, plunging part of the room into shadow. Men cursed outside, fanning out. The storm broke open in earnest, rain roaring through the holes in the roof. Lightning split the sky, casting the mission in silver fire. The outlaw reloaded with calm precision, though his breath came faster now. He fired again, another cry, another man down. But for every shadow that fell, more filled the doorway. The woman pressed closer, her voice urgent. "You can't hold them all." He almost laughed, bitter and sharp. Never planned to. Suddenly, a new light bloomed behind the riders. Brighter. Then lantern flame. Torches. A second wave had arrived. The outlaw realized the storm wasn't his only cover. It was theirs too. And then, betrayal struck. A figure moved inside the mission, rising from behind a shattered pew. Not one of the riders. Someone who had been there already, waiting. A man with a scarred face, pistol aimed not at the outlaw, but at the woman. Her gasp tore through the roar of the storm. The outlaw swung his rifle toward the intruder, torn in half by choice. Protect himself or protect the secret she carried. The scarred man smiled, lips thin as wire. "Hand her over, and you live." Lightning flared, thunder cracked, and the outlaw made his move. The outlaw's shot cracked through the storm, echoing like judgment. The scarred man staggered, pistol firing wild into the rafters before he collapsed against the stone. Silence lasted only a heartbeat. Then the mission erupted again with chaos. Bullets ripped into the walls, sending fragments of adobe spraying. The woman crawled behind the altar, clutching her pouch so tightly her knuckles whitened. The outlaw knelt beside her, reloading with steady hands even as thunder and gunfire rolled together in one unholy chorus. Outside, the storm howled. Rain poured through the broken roof, smothering the lanterns, turning gunpowder to sludge. The riders cursed, blinded by lightning, their torches sputtering. The desert itself seemed to rise against them. The outlaw seized the moment, grabbing. Her arm, he pulled her toward a side passage half buried in rubble. They stumbled through the narrow gap as bullets cracked against stone. The passage spat them into open desert, where the storm swallowed all sound but the wind. They ran until the mission was no more than a shadow behind the rain. At last the outlaw slowed, his chest heaving, his rifle still clutched like part of his body. The woman dropped to her knees, trembling. "It's over," he muttered, scanning the horizon. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't. Men like those didn't stop. Not until they had what they came for. She lifted her face. Rain, streaming down her cheeks like tears. "You should have let me die in the canyon. I told you, you'd regret this." The outlaw knelt in front of her, eyes locked on the pouch she guarded as if it were her own heartbeat. "What's in there worth so many lives?" Her fingers uncurled slowly. Inside the soaked leather pouch was a map, edges frayed, ink smudged, but clear enough to see. Rivers, mountains, a canyon marked with a black cross. Treasure or ruin. The outlaw let out a low breath. He'd heard of men killing for gold, for land, for revenge, but never had he seen so many ride through hell for a scrap of paper. Lightning split the sky again, revealing the riders still combing the desert in the distance. Their hunt was far from finished. At dawn, the storm broke, leaving silence over the sand. Ashes smoldered where the mission had stood. The outlaw and the woman were gone, swallowed by horizon. The desert had taken its price, and it would take more before this was done. If her courage or his defiance has held you through this storm, saddle up with us again. Like this story, subscribe and ring the bell, because out here in the Wild West, mercy costs blood, and some debts never die.